Have you ever been humiliated in front of a crowd? A cutting joke, a contemptuous glance, or even a burst of laughter aimed at your weakness, all seemingly designed to make you feel small, powerless, and unworthy of respect. In that moment, you stayed silent, not because you were weak, but because you didn't know how to respond without losing what little dignity you had left. In a world where quick reactions and sharp comebacks are celebrated as signs of strength, Stoic philosophy offers a different path. Not to fight back to win an argument, but to win by refusing to step into the mud. Today's video will help you regain respect, not through forceful words, but through silence, discipline, and a return that cannot be ignored. This is not about revenge, but a journey from humiliation to self-mastery. Let's begin. 1. Achievement is the sharpest response. When someone humiliates you in public, your first instinct is usually to fire back. You want to respond, reclaim your dignity, prove you're not easily disrespected. But if you do that, what happens? You walk right into the trap they've set. A battle of words you can never truly win without losing a part of yourself. Because the moment you react, you've validated the game. You've handed over your most valuable possessions, your energy, and your peace to someone who never deserved them. That's why the wise don't retaliate with words. They respond with growth and transformation. Nothing wounds more than watching the person you tried to belittle quietly succeed. Rising, gaining respect, and thriving in the very spaces you once mocked them for entering. Your silence in that first moment wasn't weakness. It was a quiet promise. I'll let my achievements finish this conversation. You don't need to convince others of your worth if you're living with discipline, acting with purpose, and improving each day. Every early morning you rise, every decision you make for growth, every limit you surpass. Each becomes a silent blow to those who thought they had buried you. You don't need announcements. You don't need declarations. They will see for themselves. They'll see you return with a new presence, a poise that no longer wavers. And what unsettles them most is realizing you no longer need them to move forward. They are no longer the center of the story. They no longer control your emotions. In that moment, the tables turn. The one who once gloated in your shame now quietly swallows regret as you rise, without once looking back. This is the kind of retribution Stoicism encourages. Not through argument, but through evolution, not fueled by resentment, but by discipline. Not to prove something to them, but to prove something to yourself. When you become a stronger version of who you were, every insult from the past becomes small, lost, and powerless. Success doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be clear enough that others fall silent when you walk in. And when that happens, you'll understand this. Sometimes the best counterattack is no counterattack at all. Just rising, evolving, and letting them regret ever thinking you'd stay the same. 2. Public disregard is the strongest form of resistance. There's a kind of resistance that needs no words, no raised voice, no validation from the crowd. It's when you openly ignore someone, in front of everyone, as if they never existed. In today's world, where presence and attention are the most powerful currencies, stripping someone of their place in your reality is the sharpest and most unsettling blow you can deliver to those who once belittled you. When they hurt you, they didn't just want you in pain. They wanted your reaction, your anger, your loss of control, because to them, that's proof they're above you. But when you choose not to respond, not to look, not to acknowledge them in any way, you cut off the source that feeds their ego, and it unsettles them to the core. Open disregard is not childish or passive. It's a powerful declaration. You no longer deserve a place in my life. It doesn't require insults or loud explanations or any kind of justification. You simply withdraw your attention, and in a world starving for recognition, indifference becomes the most elegant and effective punishment. The one who humiliated you will wait for your outburst, your retaliation, a heated exchange. But what they get is silence and cold distance. They no longer have the role of villain or even of relevance. They vanish from the stage, while you continue your life as if they were never part of it. This public silence not only confuses them, it changes how others see you. People will notice you act not from impulse, but from principle. You refuse to be swept into the drama that society thrives on. You stand apart, grounded in your values. When the one who once shamed you offers a casual greeting or a hollow, "Hope you're doing well," and you walk past without stopping, that's not just detachment. That's the message. You once had access to me. You lost it. Nothing more needs to be said. No explanations, no negotiations, no need for anyone to understand. And that quiet finality is what makes them feel small, lost, and powerless. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That truth is absolute in moments like these. You don't need to become bitter. You just need to be absent. Your distance, your indifference, the unbridgeable space between you, that's how you reclaim your power without disturbing your inner peace. Because in the end, you don't need to shout to prove your worth. You just need to be silent at the right moment and let the emptiness speak for itself. 3. Say it once, then never again. There are moments when you must speak, not to appear strong, but to draw a line. Not to argue, but to state what will not be tolerated. But what gives your words power isn't their length or volume. It's the resolve that follows. You say it once and never again. In a world used to venting, vague posts and long emotional texts, speaking briefly, clearly, and choosing silence afterward is the highest form of self-mastery. Many believe that explaining yourself is a sign of reason. But when you try to make someone who disrespected you understand right from wrong, you hand them the power to define your worth. You lower yourself in hope of empathy, and in doing so, you surrender part of your dignity. The person who publicly humiliated you doesn't need your justification. They're not after truth, they're after dominance. And that power comes from making you chase clarity, beg to be understood, scramble to repair your image. But you don't have to play that game. You speak once, calm, clear, without bitterness or spite, and then let silence carry the weight. When you speak once and never repeat it, the whole room quiets. Because people are used to emotional responses, anger, and endless dialogue. But when you say just one line and finish with a steady gaze, you don't just end the conversation, you shut the door between you and them. They may smile awkwardly, offer excuses, or try to recover the moment, but deep down, they know you're no longer within reach. And those watching, though they may say nothing, will remember that moment. Not because your words were profound, but because you needed no more. Confidence doesn't come from saying a lot. It comes from knowing you don't have to say it more than once. It means you need no agreement, no defense, no validation. Because you know who you are, where you stand, and your value doesn't shift with someone else's perception. This is not the silence of defeat. It's the silence of resolution. The world today craves noise, but it's in silence that true control is revealed. When you refuse to be dragged into verbal conflict, you deny the other person the chance to pull you down to their level. You keep your words sharp, like a blade drawn at the right moment and sheathed immediately after. No repetition, no negotiation, and when you do that, you don't need to defeat anyone. you've already won, because you walked away without losing yourself. 4. Remove those who laughed with them. When someone humiliates you in public, your first instinct is often to fix your eyes on the one who delivered the blow. But if you look more closely, the real pain doesn't come from the attacker. It comes from the familiar faces, the ones who laughed along, the ones who stayed silent, the ones who turned away as if they heard nothing. That is the sharper betrayal, because the person who openly insulted you may be a stranger or someone insignificant, but those who chose comfort over integrity were often the ones who once sat beside you, shook your hand, and called you a friend. The one you thought you could rely on in your most fragile moment is often the first to laugh when you are humiliated. They'll say it was just a joke, that you should lighten up, that everyone was laughing. But none of them realized that their laughter was proof they chose safety over decency. The wound from a stranger is a scratch. The betrayal of someone close is a knife to the heart. And the most important thing you must understand is this: you cannot keep these people in your life just because you fear being alone or dislike confrontation. The moment they chose to laugh, they made a choice. And now, you must make yours. To remove does not mean to retaliate or to hate. It simply means to redraw your boundaries. To realize that if someone can smile while you are being humiliated, they will not stand by you when you truly need protection. Neutrality in the face of your humiliation is not innocence. It is a deliberate decision. They chose not to speak, not to act, not to stand up, and that says everything. You don't need to make an announcement. You don't need to post your grievance online. You don't need to voice a single reproach. You simply disappear from their circle. No invitations, no calls, no more trust given. And you will see they won't return, won't ask, won't wonder why. Because they know. They know they weren't there when it mattered, and they understand your silence is your conclusion. Keeping those who laughed at your pain isn't generosity. It's a form of self-betrayal. Every time you forgive cowardly silence too easily, you teach others that you have no limits. Every time you smile again at someone who turned their back when you needed them most, you blur the line between yourself and disrespect. And over time, you'll lose the right to be respected, not because you are unworthy, but because you fail to uphold your worth. When you cut off those toxic ties, you don't become bitter. You become clear. Your circle becomes smaller, but cleaner. Fewer people, but more real. And you'll be surprised how light life feels when you no longer fake smiles for those who once laughed at your suffering. This is not punishment, it is purification. And it is a vital part of reclaiming respect, not just from others, but from yourself. 5. Make them regret it by growing beyond them. When someone tries to publicly shame you, they're usually betting on one thing: that you won't dare respond, that you won't have the courage to rise, that you'll lack the confidence to reclaim yourself. They believe you'll bow your head, accept the silence, and let the humiliation fade into memory as something inevitable. But they miscalculated, because they forgot one form of resistance more powerful than any comeback: your quiet, undeniable growth. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to vow success just to get back at them. You only need to work quietly, steadily, piece by piece, rebuilding yourself from the wreckage they thought they left behind. And then one day, when you show up, not to confront, not to boast, but simply to do your work with calm presence, they will go silent. Not because you demanded respect, but because you forced them to confront themselves. The deepest regret doesn't come from insults returned. It comes from seeing someone you once belittled rise far beyond your reach. Regret does not arrive immediately. It builds slowly. With every moment you become more composed, more resilient, more grounded. When they hear your name spoken with admiration, when they see others turn to you for guidance, when they scroll past your life and realize you are living something they never imagined. Regret needs no words. It shows in their eyes when they see you've moved on, unbothered, outside their influence. And that is when you know you've won, not with words, but with transformation. Growth never happens overnight. It comes when you endure pain without complaint, effort without praise, judgment without chasing approval. It arrives when you give up the need to be understood and begin to honor the need to be self-respecting. When you no longer need others to see that you are right, you enter an entirely different realm of inner strength. And when you live by that standard daily, you don't just shrink those who once tried to shame you. You inspire those who once stayed silent, believing they too weren't worthy of rising. Don't expect apologies. Don't wait for their acknowledgement. You don't need validation from those who once wounded you to prove your worth more. You just need to keep living, kind, focused, disciplined, and quietly rise out of the shadows they tried to bury you in. And then, in that moment when you no longer think of them, but they can't stop thinking of you, that's when your growth becomes the strongest form of justice you could ever give. 6. Turn humor into a weapon. When you're insulted in front of others, the last thing they expect from you is a smile. They wait for anger, a sharp comeback, a loss of control. They want to see you flustered, shaken, to confirm that their jab landed. But if, in that exact moment, you smile, not out of weakness, but out of control, the whole board shifts. A single witty reply tinged with irony, light enough not to seem bitter, sharp enough to leave them uneasy, becomes your most skillful and effective counter. Humor, when used well, is not just a tool for diffusing tension. It's the sharpest weapon you have when publicly attacked. Because while everyone anticipates an explosion, you deliver a clever line that turns the entire room. That's how you make people reflect, not by being harsh, but by making them awkward inside the joke they started. And most importantly, you do it without losing dignity. You don't need to shout to prove your strength. You just need to smile, drop a sharp line, and return to your work as if nothing ever interrupted you. A well-timed, humorous response not only throws your opponent off, but also shifts how others see you. From victim, you become the one in control. From being the punchline, you flip the script without being heavy-handed. People will remember you, not because you yelled, but because you made the room laugh at the one who tried to hurt you. And the beauty of it is that you didn't need anger, shame, or justification. Just calm, a clear mind, and a blade disguised as a joke they never saw coming. Humor is not a mask for emotion, it's the transformation of it. Instead of reacting from pain, you respond with wit. Instead of being ruled by emotion, you use refinement to reclaim power. When someone tries to diminish you with words, and you not only stand your ground, but return a line that silences them, you prove you are not only unshaken, you are formidable. And most importantly, using humor to strike back doesn't mean mocking or wounding others. It's a deliberate choice to maintain grace while resetting the boundary. When you can silence someone with a smile, you've mastered what most never learn. How to win a confrontation without ever fighting. And you know the best part? That one line will echo in their mind for weeks as they keep wondering, did I just get destroyed by a joke? 7. Don't seek justification from those who twisted the truth. There is a common mistake many wounded people make. Trying to justify themselves to those who once distorted the truth to shame them. They hope that if they explain more clearly, say it one more time, offer one more piece of evidence, the other person will understand, apologize, or at least change their perspective. But what they fail to see is this: those who deliberately twisted the truth from the beginning never truly cared about it. They don't need your logic, because their goal was never to understand you. Their goal was to control you, and they do that by keeping you chasing clarity, always feeling the need to explain just a little more. Every time you try to clarify something to someone who lacks good faith, you place yourself in the weaker position. Not because you are wrong, but because you are letting them become the center around which you revolve. The harder you try to prove yourself right, the more they can drag you into pointless debates, games you can never win, because they wrote the rules. Justification in the hands of the malicious becomes a trap, one that forces you to constantly explain yourself, constantly seek to be understood, while they stand still and watch your composure erode. Stoic philosophy teaches us this: if someone has already twisted your words once, they do not deserve a second chance to hear you out. They've already shown who they are, that they value ego over truth, and will use words to manipulate others for their own satisfaction. With people like that, silence is not surrender, it's a statement. You're saying, without saying it, I don't need you to understand me in order to know I'm right. And that silence is the strongest reply, because it both reclaims your control and extinguishes their desire to dominate. There are people who do not deserve the truth, not because truth is unimportant, but because offering it to those who disrespect it only diminishes your own dignity. They will keep twisting the story, scripting outcomes that benefit them, retelling it in ways that make you seem overly sensitive, or worse, at fault. And if you keep trying to set the record straight, you're unintentionally confirming their right to define who you are. But you don't need that. You don't need agreement to keep your peace. Let them believe what they want. Let them rewrite the story with the ending they prefer. You are not obligated to fix every rumor, not responsible for maintaining your image in the eyes of someone who betrayed you with words. What you need is steady silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence that comes from knowing not everyone deserves to hear from you again. And when you are calm enough to walk away without defending yourself, that is the moment you prove you don't need them to understand, because you've already understood yourself. 8. Return in silence with a transformation they can't ignore. There are comebacks that require no announcement, no dramatic vow, no declaration of revenge. Yet they're powerful enough to silence an entire room. It's when you return, not to seek justice, but to show the world that you've become someone entirely different from the one they once underestimated. You're not coming back to get even, not to shame anyone. You return because you're ready, stronger, calmer, and no longer easy to break. After humiliation, most people either try to forget or get lost in bitterness and grief. But you didn't. You chose the harder road: silence. You withdrew from the noise, stepped away from the petty game others played, and began rebuilding yourself from within. In the unnoticed dark, you worked quietly. You studied, you trained, you healed. No one knew how many invitations you turned down, how many old habits you gave up, how many times you picked yourself back up in solitude. But it was in those unseen places that you truly grew. Then, one day, you show up again. No noise, no signal, no announcement. You simply arrive, with different energy, a different gaze, a presence that makes others stop in their tracks. They look at you and know something has changed, and no one can deny it. Your transformation doesn't need explanation. It shows in your steadier voice, your firmer stride, your freedom from needing validation because you've already given that to yourself. The one who once hurt you will sense your presence before you speak. They'll feel the confidence they can no longer touch, the distance they no longer have the right to close. And what haunts them most isn't what you say, it's that you no longer need to say anything. You've moved beyond their influence. You haven't come back to confront, you've come back as living proof of transformation, and to them, that is the harshest consequence. A true return isn't made to impress. It's the natural result of real growth. When the past no longer drives you, when you no longer cling to old reputations, when you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone, you enter a new realm, one where every glance reconsiders you, even if no one says it out loud. And the best part is, you don't need to speak, because your grounded presence answers everything to those who once doubted. 9. Hold the line. Never lower your standards. When someone publicly wounds you, they're not just throwing an insult, they're testing your limits. They're watching how far you'll let them go, how much you'll endure, whether you have the strength to say, "This is where it stops." It's not just a joke. It's not just a cruel remark. It's a test of self-respect. And the question is, how will you respond? Many people shrink. They force a smile, pretend it's nothing, tell themselves not worth the fuss, or they were just joking. But the truth is, when you say nothing, when you take no action, you're silently sending a message that this treatment is acceptable. And it will repeat. Next time will be worse. Next time, in front of more people. Next time, it'll hurt deeper because you've taught them you're someone who lets it slide. Holding your standards isn't being stubborn. It's self-respect with boundaries. It's knowing your value doesn't lie in pleasing others. It lies in honoring yourself first. A person with standards doesn't have to declare them. They show them. When someone crosses the line, they don't threaten. They simply stand up and walk away. No complaint, no explanation. And that firmness forces others to reevaluate how they behave. The world quickly senses weak boundaries. People will push further, test more, until you don't even recognize yourself in the relationship. And if you don't speak up, if you don't guard the line between respect and insult, you'll lose your inner power without realizing it. But if you clearly draw the line and refuse to let anyone step over it, something strange happens. Those who once dismissed you begin to tread carefully. Those who joked begin to fall silent, and those who underestimated you begin to reconsider. Yes, you'll lose some people. Some will call you difficult, others cold, even arrogant. But the truth is, when you start standing up for yourself, those who benefited from your silence will be the first to complain. And that's not your fault. That's just how it feels when people can no longer take advantage of your kindness. You weren't born to be liked by everyone. You were born to live by principles that let you hold your head high when no one else is left. So next time someone throws an insult, don't whisper to yourself, "They were just joking." Look them in the eye, and if necessary, walk away. Don't apologize for setting a boundary. Don't lower your standards to preserve a connection that makes you feel small, because when you hold the line, you're not just teaching others how to treat you. You're teaching yourself what it truly means to be loved and protected by your own hand. 10. Let them live with the memory of losing you. Some people will never admit they were wrong. They won't apologize, won't feel remorse, won't ask how deeply you were hurt. But you don't need any of that to close a chapter. You don't need an apology to forgive, nor redemption to move on. You only need one thing: to be clear-headed enough to walk away and calm enough never to return. Because sometimes the harshest punishment for those who hurt you isn't your anger, it's your permanent absence from their life. When someone has mocked you, belittled you, and wounded you in public without hesitation, the moment they lose your presence is the moment they are left to live with a memory, not of what they did wrong, but of the version of you they will never access again. And what torments them isn't what they said, but the fact that they can never come back, never re-enter your life, not even to explain. You don't need to block them. Don't need loud goodbyes. Don't need to tell the world what happened. You only need to withdraw your energy. You go silent, focus on living well, and continue growing in ways they never imagined. One day, they'll see you, by chance on social media, in a story someone tells, or in a glance exchanged in public, and they'll realize they once had the chance to walk beside someone remarkable, but they lost it because they failed to appreciate it. Your silence, your growth, your quiet disappearance. These will form a lasting sentence no one can undo. You don't need to win an argument, you just need to win in life. And when you do that, they'll be left with the memory that you were once kind enough to forgive, patient enough to listen, sincere enough to give, but now, rational enough to vanish without ever looking back. Sometimes, people don't recognize value until it's gone. They don't realize you were the only one who stood by them during chaos, the one who silently endured their insults just to preserve the relationship, the one who gave them chance after chance they treated like routine. But time doesn't rewind, and neither should you. Because every step backward is a step away from your own growth. Let them live with the words they once said. Let them cling to the image of you quietly enduring without resistance. Let the memory of you be all they have left, because that's where you stopped, and the real you has already moved forward. And it's that absence more than anything that will make them finally see. You were a gift they threw away with their own hands. I used to believe that respect came from pleasing others, from keeping the peace, staying humble, and trying to prove I meant no harm. But life taught me the opposite. The more you explain, the more people may disregard you. The more you try to clarify, the more they twist your words. And then one day you realize, true respect doesn't come from what you say. It comes from the boundaries you draw and the consistency you maintain. People won't respect you if you don't respect yourself. I used to stay silent out of fear of offending others, used to hold on to relationships that should have ended long ago. But I've learned that kindness without boundaries turns into permissiveness. And when you fail to act in defense of your dignity, don't be surprised when people assume they're entitled to walk all over you. From the day I began choosing silence at the right time, walking away when necessary, and focusing on my own growth instead of seeking justice from those who never cared, I felt calmer, stronger, and freer. No one needs to know what you've been through. They only need to see who you've become, and that alone will be the clearest answer to everything. If you found value in these reflections, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's next. Stand firm in your standards, live true to yourself, and let your silence echo louder than any reply. See you in the next video.